The heavy clang of the judge's gavel echoed like a death knell across the courtroom. "We find the defendant, Sarah Mills, guilty. Sentencing death." A breathless silence swallowed the room. Reporters froze mid-note. Guards tightened their grips on their weapons, and the public gallery became statues. No one cheered. No one wept. It was the kind of silence that screamed louder than any outrage. Sarah Mills, once a symbol of courage, stood as still as stone. Her uniform stripped, her badge surrendered. The same hands that once saluted her now pointed fingers of blame. But Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't cry. Her face, framed by bruises and exhaustion, wore only calm resignation. And there, hidden from the official record, from the cold courtroom transcripts, was the beginning of another story, one not written by lawyers or judges. In the last row, sitting stiffly between two guards, a pair of sharp, golden brown eyes locked onto Sarah with unwavering focus. Rex, the K-9 unit who had once saved countless lives alongside her, now shackled, muzzled, and caged like a criminal himself. His body was tense, muscles coiled like a spring ready to snap. Yet he made no sound. He didn't bark, didn't whine. His protest was silent, and it was deafening. Sarah's chest tightened as her eyes briefly flickered toward him. A tiny, nearly imperceptible nod passed between them. It was a goodbye and a promise. The bailiff moved toward Sarah, clamping cold metal cuffs onto her wrists. Still, she didn't resist. As she was led away from the courtroom, Rex's entire body surged forward instinctively, chains pulling him back hard. A sharp yelp escaped his throat, raw and desperate, before he slammed onto the floor, pinned by handlers. Gasps rippled through the room. Even the judge flinched. Sarah didn't turn back. She couldn't. If she did, she might never walk forward again. Outside the courthouse, a growing storm brewed. Protesters' signs clashed against police shields. Media vans lined the streets. Strangers screamed Sarah's name, some in fury, others in sorrow. Yet amidst the chaos, a single truth began to shimmer beneath the surface, like light under ice. This wasn't just a story of justice denied. It was a story of loyalty no system could cage. A story of love, fierce, primal, and patient, that refused to die quietly. And as Sarah disappeared behind the armored doors of a prison transport van, and Rex was dragged into a holding truck, the world unknowingly missed the most important part. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. The walls of the K-9 holding facility were sterile, cold, and utterly indifferent to the broken souls caged within them. Rex lay motionless in the corner of his kennel, his breathing slow, his eyes dull. His body, once a coiled spring of energy, had become a heavy, unwilling mass. Handlers passed by, tossing treats, calling his name, tapping on the bars, but Rex remained a statue of grief. No tail wagged, no ears perked up, only silence. The same kind of silence that had filled the courtroom the day Sarah's life had been stolen from her. 2 weeks had passed since the sentencing. In that time, Rex hadn't eaten a full meal. He refused every bribe. No chew toy, no ball. No kind words could penetrate the void inside him. The once legendary K-9, praised for his loyalty and intelligence, was now labeled in his file. Unstable. Unfit for duty. "Poor guy," mumbled a young handler, setting down a bowl of untouched food near his door. "He's not broken, he's heartbroken." Across the facility, whispers circulated of how this dog wasn't just mourning a partner, but clinging desperately to something no human could understand. An older handler, Officer Grant, watched Rex with narrowed eyes from behind the glass window. Grant had worked with K-9s longer than some officers had been alive. He had seen anger, fear, even hatred in dogs before. But what he saw in Rex was different. It was devotion. Raw, blistering devotion refusing to wither even under the weight of loss. "He's not letting go," Grant muttered to himself. "He's waiting for her." Meanwhile, in the cold shadows of Ironhold Prison, Sarah Mills sat on a narrow cot staring at the cracked concrete wall. Days blurred into nights. Lights flashed on and off. Meals slid through a slot in the door like afterthoughts. She no longer counted the hours. In her mind, there was only one image that replayed again and again, Rex, straining against the chains, trying to get to her. Her heart ached more for him than for herself. She had accepted her fate, but what she couldn't accept was Rex believing she had abandoned him. "I'm sorry, buddy," she whispered into the stale air. "I'm so sorry." Somewhere, far beyond the cold walls, something shifted. Back at the facility, a mistake rippled through the routine. A new recruit, nervous and rushing through evening checks, forgot to latch Rex's kennel properly. The heavy metal door clanged but didn't click shut. No alarms. No warnings. For a moment, Rex remained still, untrusting. But then, a subtle change, the scent of open air. His nose twitched. The world sharpened into focus. Muscles remembered their purpose. Without hesitation, Rex pushed against the door. It creaked open. No frantic barking. No wild sprint. Rex moved with deadly calm, slipping down the corridors, avoiding the staff like a ghost in the night. Every paw step was deliberate, driven not by freedom, but by duty. He wasn't running away. He was running to something. To her. The night air was cool and sharp against Rex's fur as he padded silently through the darkened streets. He could feel the pulse of the city, the hum of distant cars, the faint flicker of neon lights, the smell of rain on the pavement. But none of it mattered. He had one goal, one mission, to find Sarah. Every step was purposeful. His instincts, honed over years of training with Sarah, guided him like an invisible thread. He didn't need to think. His body knew where to go. The city seemed to fold into itself, quieting, as if the buildings and streets were holding their breath. The usual noise of life was muted, but not in Rex's mind. In his mind, there was only Sarah, the bond they had shared, one that could not be severed by a courtroom or a prison wall. Rex moved past familiar streets, through alleyways that had once been a part of their patrol routes. He didn't stop. His paws clicked on the pavement with a steady rhythm, but he ignored the world around him. He knew this city like the back of his paw. He could feel the weight of every brick, every turn, every scent. He passed by places he had once shared with Sarah, the diner where she'd gotten their morning coffee, the park where they'd stopped for a break on long shifts. It was all part of the trail leading to the place that had become her prison. Rex had been there with her, in the courtrooms, in the fields. And now, despite the miles, he would not stop until he reached her again. He paused at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change, but his eyes never strayed from the distant skyline. There it was, the looming structure of Ironhold Prison, where Sarah waited behind cold iron bars. Inside the prison, Sarah lay on her cot, unable to sleep. The hours were endless, and the days bled into one another. She could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on her, and it gnawed at her sanity. In her mind, she kept hearing Rex's voice, not the bark or growl of a dog, but the deep rumble of his trust, his loyalty, the soft comfort of his presence beside her. What had happened to him? Was he okay? Did he understand why she was gone? These thoughts were the only things keeping her tethered to some semblance of hope. But every day, the walls of the prison closed in, tightening around her heart. Rex's journey grew more intense with every mile. He passed the outskirts of the city, the familiar streets now replaced by cold industrial zones and open fields. He didn't hesitate. His body had become a machine, driven by a singular purpose. He was no longer just a dog. He was Sarah's protector, her savior. As the prison neared, Rex's pace quickened. He could feel the looming presence of the building ahead, but he wasn't afraid. He had come too far, and nothing would stop him now. It wasn't just a prison. It was a fortress. Guards, watchtowers, fences, all designed to keep people inside. But Rex wasn't here to break in. He was here to rescue the one person who had never given up on him. He crouched low in the shadows, scanning the perimeter. His eyes flicked to every detail. The guard stationed at regular intervals, the barbed wire coiling high above, the security cameras. But Rex wasn't worried about them. He had always been smarter than the average guard dog. And this time, the stakes were higher. He could already hear the faint sounds of footsteps echoing in the distance, but they weren't from the prison's officers. It was the sound of his destiny calling him, echoing back through the years of training, loyalty, and love. His mind was clear, his focus unyielding. The world beyond the prison walls, the cold steel gates, and the looming danger faded. There was only Sarah. The night stretched long and unforgiving. Rex was close now, so close he could smell the concrete, the iron gates, and the cold steel of the prison walls. His heart thundered in his chest, but his steps remained steady. The closer he got to the prison, the more aware he became of the risks. There was no turning back. He crouched in the shadows, just beyond the prison's perimeter, his golden eyes reflecting the flickering light of the distant street lamps. His muscles coiled as he surveyed the guards patrolling the area. They moved in a steady rhythm, unaware of the approaching storm. Rex knew the system. He'd been trained for situations like this. His training wasn't just about apprehending suspects. It was about strategy, about patience, and above all about loyalty. Loyalty that went beyond commands, beyond duties. This was more than a mission. This was everything. Every sound, every movement of the guards was memorized in his mind. He could predict their steps, the way they circled the yard, where their blind spots were. It was second nature, and with a final glance to the stars above, Rex knew what he had to do. He darted forward, moving with the precision of a shadow. His paws barely made a sound against the ground as he slid under the edge of the nearest guard tower, a place no one had expected a dog to go. He had memorized the guard patterns from his past encounters on patrols, and now he was using that knowledge to weave his way through the prison's defenses. As he approached the main gates, he slowed, ears perked. The guards were no more than a few feet away. He paused, the tension palpable in the air. For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, without warning, he made his move. A sharp bark broke the quiet night. It was a loud, demanding sound, one that caught the guards off guard. They whirled toward the sound, but by the time they raised their weapons, Rex was already in motion. He darted past the first guard, then the second, faster than they could react. They stumbled, calling for backup, but Rex was already gone, a blur of fur in the night. He reached the outer wall, the familiar scent of Sarah growing stronger with every step. He didn't need to stop and think. He had trained for moments like this. Rex leapt up, claws digging into the stone wall, his back legs propelling him higher and higher. The guards' shouts echoed through the night, but it was too late. With one last powerful push, Rex cleared the top of the wall and landed softly on the other side, just as the sounds of sirens began to fill the air. The prison was now on alert, but Rex was already moving toward his final destination. Inside Iron Hold, Sarah lay in her cell, staring blankly at the wall. She had given up all hope of escape. The endless days of isolation had drained her spirit. But then something happened. She heard it, faint at first, but undeniable. Barking. Sharp. Loud. Close. Her heart skipped a beat. Rex. A surge of hope flooded her chest. She sat up quickly, pressing her ear against the cold bars of her cell. She could hear it now, a sound that had been her lifeline for years. Rex's unmistakable bark, calling to her, pulling her out of the darkness. She rushed to the window, her hands shaking with anticipation. And there, at the edge of the prison yard, she saw him, Rex. He was alive. He was here. The sight of him, strong and determined, filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt in what seemed like forever. Her heart raced, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to smile. But the guards were coming. She could hear their boots on the ground, their radios crackling with orders. The moment of her freedom was slipping away. "Rex, please," she whispered to herself, willing him to come closer. The sirens wailed, their sound echoing off the cold stone walls of Iron Hold Prison. The prison had been thrown into chaos. Guards scrambled, their radios crackling with frantic orders, but it was already too late. Rex had made his mark, and now nothing would stop him. Sarah's heart pounded as she pressed her face to the cold bars of her cell. Rex's bark had been the spark that reignited the hope she thought had been extinguished. She knew he was here. She knew he would never leave her. But time was running out. The sounds of the guards' hurried steps grew closer. But Sarah was no longer trapped by fear. The dog she had trusted, trained, and loved more than anything was out there, breaking every rule, every boundary, just to save her. And he was coming for her. Through the bars, she caught a glimpse of him, Rex, moving swiftly, his eyes locked on her cell. He was only a few feet away. But with every second, the tension thickened. The prison walls felt tighter, more suffocating. But Rex was determined. Nothing would stop him. Just as a guard appeared, shouting commands and reaching for his radio, Rex leapt forward, his powerful body barreling into the guard, knocking him to the ground. The officer yelped, scrambling to regain his footing, but Rex was already past him, his attention solely focused on Sarah. With a single, powerful leap, Rex reached the bars of her cell. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she looked into his eyes, the eyes that had seen her through the worst moments of her life. In that moment, everything else faded away. The weight of the world, the betrayal of the system, and even the approaching guards meant nothing. There was only Rex, and the love they shared. "Rex," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Rex sat at her feet, looking up at her with a silent understanding. His tail wagged once. Then he let out a low, almost mournful whine. He was here. He had kept his promise. But their escape wasn't guaranteed. The chaos outside the cell was growing louder, and more guards were rushing in. It was only a matter of time before they realized what had happened and began to close in. "Stay close, boy," Sarah murmured, her fingers wrapping around the bars. "We're getting out of here." Rex's ears pricked up as he turned his head, scanning the room. He knew they had no time to waste. Sarah's heart raced. She reached into the small pocket hidden inside her prison jumpsuit and pulled out a keycard she had taken from one of the guards weeks before. She had known this day might come. She had planned for it, even if she hadn't been able to see it through. The keycard was the only thing between them and freedom. Her hands were shaking as she slid it into the slot on the cell door. The lock clicked open with a soft snap, and the door creaked ajar. The sound of it was deafening in the chaos of the moment, but to Sarah, it was the sound of hope. "Come on, Rex," she urged. She stepped out of the cell, her eyes darting around for any sign of guards, but Rex stayed right by her side. His presence was a shield, a reminder that she was no longer alone. Together, they would fight their way out of this place. They moved quickly through the hallways, every step bringing them closer to freedom. But they weren't alone for long. As they neared the exit, a guard stepped into the hallway, his gun raised. "Freeze!" he shouted. But Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. With Rex at her side, she felt invincible. She took a deep breath and lunged forward, dodging the guard's swing. Rex leapt at the same moment, his teeth sinking into the officer's arm, sending him crashing to the ground. The guard screamed in pain, but Rex didn't let go until the threat was neutralized. "Let's go, boy," Sarah shouted, her heart hammering in her chest. They reached the outer gates, the towering iron bars that had kept Sarah imprisoned for so long. But this time, they didn't stop. Rex, with his keen instincts, found a weak spot in the fence. With a mighty push, he tore through the wire, creating a gap just large enough for both of them to squeeze through. They ran into the night, the city streets bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights. The air was thick with freedom, and every breath they took was a testament to their survival. As they reached the safety of the outskirts, Sarah collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed by the surge of emotion. She looked down at Rex, who sat beside her, his head resting gently on her lap. He had saved her. He had given her a second chance at life. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you, Rex." He nuzzled her hand in response, his loyalty unwavering. They were free, and together they would rebuild their lives, away from the darkness of the past, in a place where loyalty and love would always guide them.